Welcome. I'm Janelle Kolaski, a career mindset coach and actor.
And I'm Amanda Dubois, a self-authenticity and prosperity life coach and actor as well. And we're your co-host of Mindset Artistry YouTube channel,
where we teach you the art of discovering and using your mindset
to build a career and life you desire.
I just want to jump into this conversation about shame. You know, being in the film industry and being just a creative in general in a world that is very much so surrounded by people who are very one stream mind, who feel like you have to follow a certain path in order to be successful and happy and abundant and all the things. It can be very difficult to be a creative and pursue your dreams because you're going to come across and come against a lot of no's and a lot of rejections. It is a part of the path. It is, unfortunately, most of the time, the reason you're going to grow and overcome all the challenges is you have to face the rejection. Unfortunately, what comes with the rejection is the shame and guilt. And I'm speaking for myself because I know what it's like to walk into an audition room, have done my preparation, and then have the expectation of like, oh, I'm going to get a smile, a nod, a thumbs up in that audition room. Back when we were actually in audition rooms, now we're doing everything on our own, which I think it can be a good thing and a bad thing because we don't have a sense of connection. We have to connect with a screen with no one and miss the air, especially if your reader is no longer in the room with you. You can deal with a lot of rejection because you're not getting a reaction that you want, a sense of encouragement, a sense of acknowledgement, a sense of like, oh, you did a great job. All that work you spent on your craft is paying off. You don't get that. So I used to walk out of rooms really excited, right? Really, really excited. I'm like, yeah, I did it. I'm doing great. And then instantly I would feel some sense of shame or guilt. And it was a lot of things that were contributing to it as well. And, you know, shame is like this painful feeling of, you know, humiliation or distress, you know, caused by this consciousness or subconscious of wrong or foolish behavior, or even just behavior that feels less than our highest self and our joyous self, right? And so I would instantly feel shame and guilt. One, I would feel shame and guilt for actually pursuing a career that wasn't path for me according to my life, my family and the society, right? I didn't grow up in a world around people who were already in the industry. Didn't have that. I didn't have anybody in the industry at all. My mother, my father, any of my family, or at least my immediate family, no one. I've always heard stories of other people trying and never pursuing. My grandmother had a great voice and still is, thankfully, she's still alive. She has a great voice. She was on TV back in the 70s. You know, singing and beautiful and vivacious. She was this 5'11" tall Black woman. And yet she came across all these racist things, all these hardships, and never pursued that, even though she was told by many people how talented she was. And she didn't pursue it. And so all I knew, hello, Loxy, all I knew, Robin, all I knew was rejection and not pursuing your dream and not being successful and therefore living that shame. So I felt shameful for actually coming out of that room and doing it, one. Two, I also felt shame and guilt that I didn't get, again, the recognition or the acknowledgement that I was expecting because I worked so freaking hard at home and like studied these scenes and knew this character in and out and went in there and gave it my all. And they were like, okay, thank you. Have a good one. Well, can I get an applause or something? Thank you for, none of that, right? And so I was just like, what? Okay, I guess I didn't do a great job. And I would instantly feel shame and guilt. Like, well, then maybe I shouldn't be doing this. Maybe I'm taking up space for someone else who actually is great at it. And all that would come up for me. And I didn't honestly know how to handle it. So I just suppressed it. I suppressed it. I really did. I suppressed it and I was like, all right, I'm going to keep going. But low key, my heart was broken because I let the rejection get to me on a level that it shouldn't have. And I should have saw it on on a level of opportunity, a level of access, and all the things that I will be talking about in a couple of ways of how to overcome this shame and guilt. But before I do, I want to pass it on to Nell. Nell, tell me your experience, if at all, with shame and guilt when it's come to this industry. I know you being a model, being an actor, a dancer, doing roller derby. She's a badass, by the way, y'all. She's done roller derby. Badass, okay? By the way, what's your name for roller derby? What was it? So I'll pass it on to you.
My name was Jananigans, which I'm very proud of that. I don't know if I'll ever be that creative again. That is my name, Janelle, mixed with shenanigans. And thank you. Derby was a lot of fun. I would not do it in New York City because I might die. I did it in Pittsburgh, but I do not mess with the people from New York City on skates hitting each other. But regarding shame and rejection and all those things, I felt wrong saying that I wanted to be an actor when I was younger because I was growing up with a brother with autism. And it was constantly this thing that I'm even working through now where I felt wrong taking up space. And so my parents gave me attention and everything, and I was a dancer. And so I had my shows, and that was my performative art. But I really wanted to be an actor for whatever reason. I couldn't figure it out then. I really wanted to be on TV or in movies. I would watch a TV or movie and be like, I want to do that. I really want to do that. And I felt shame around that because also we didn't have a lot of money. And I remember one time my dad took me to this Disney weekend thing where you could go and maybe be on Disney Channel. And then, the person that was running the show said I had a lot of potential, but I would need acting classes. We couldn't afford them. We had to pay for my brother and everything that he needs, which I'm 100% behind. But I had a lot of shame around that. Also growing up as a Christian, and if you're a Christian, that's totally fine. Having personal experience with it, actually have a very beautiful perspective about Christianity, even though I don't practice anymore. But making things about myself felt wrong. I felt wrong being the center of attention. It felt like it was ungodly or something. But now, as I got older, I feel we all come onto this earth with different gifts, talents, different reasons that we're here. There's a beautiful essence we have that aligns with who we are at our core and the people that we're meant to have an impact on and interact with as we come through life together, that some of us are meant to be actors and performers and channel stories through us that will impact people's lives. And there's nothing shameful about that. Sometimes celebrity or focus can come with it, but that's for me not what it's about. I actually don't want to be famous. I'm sure it would happen if I got to work with Meryl Streep, which is the goal. But I didn't grow up being like, I want to be famous. It was, I want to be an actor and I want to do that for a living. That's what I want. So that makes me think about shame. And then also self-doubt definitely comes up when, and I was just talking about this, I wasn't taught to self-soothe. I didn't feel safe. We have a comment here. My biggest shame and guilt comes from my sexuality. And as a woman, we're told to be a certain way or act a certain way. Oh man, yes. I was just talking about that too, but I'm going to let Amanda hit that, but I'm going to quickly wrap up what I was saying, but thank you for bringing that up. Now I don't remember, so. But the point is, the self-doubt definitely comes in. Oh, I wasn't taught to self-soothe. I wasn't taught to go and take care of yourself. I was taught, like, the only way I could feel safe is everybody else telling me I was okay. And so I am still working through that. I still don't feel safe just going on my own. I have to be like, if I'm upset and other people aren't like, oh, I'm sorry you're going through that. Are you okay? Or whatever, I can't get out of it. And that's just a chemical thing that's happening in my body that I'm healing. But it can get in the way of acting, because if you go into an audition room and you do a good job and you work so hard on this and it's your dream and everyone's like, thank you. Mm-hmm. It can be very easy to just feel like you sucked. And you should just give up and you shouldn't be there, when really you fucking killed it. And they probably did like it, but also, who cares?
Exactly. Who cares? As my mother always says, and you can take this FTS, fuck that shit, right? So I love what you said about how this shame can come from previous activations or unhealed wounds from when you were a child, because most of the time it does. Maybe you grew up in a household or in an environment where you weren't considered, it wasn't healthy or considered to do like soothing. Like, you're okay, it's all right, don't worry. Or you did get that. And now you expect the world to do that for you. Right? So it can be in a pendulum. You can have it either way. So I do want to address this comment here. It says, my biggest shame and guilt comes from my sexuality. And as a woman, we're told to be a certain way or to act or a certain way. I completely understand, because we as women, it's for many centuries and decades, we have been considered less than. We have been considered a minority. And it's really unfortunate because we are so powerful. I mean, we birth life. We give life. We bleed every month, honey. All right. It says a lot. Our bodies are just so tremendous and amazing. And we are seen as less than on a consistent basis, no matter what background you come from. Women are considered less than. Now, if you look at way back in the day in the indigenous people, women were in well regard. So it's really interesting how society has changed that. It's my dog is barking. How society has changed that. Benny, okay. You're not in this conversation, sir. See? A man. Okay. So, you get the male perspective of how we should be living. And the truth of the matter is, I grew up in a male-dominant family. My mother has 6 brothers. My dad has 2 brothers and a sister. So I grew up around a lot. I have male cousins. It was very rare for me to grow up in a society, in a culture that was mostly women. And the only influences that I had were my mother and just like the older generation. But I grew up with a lot of men. And so I had to constantly feel tough and strong and not weak and do the things that they were doing in order to seem equal or seen or heard. And I'm grateful for it in a way, because it really pushed my limits as a child to do creative things and play basketball and football and all the things. But yet my mother was really beautiful because she nurtured the softer feminine side of me. I entered a pageant when I was younger, and talking about shame and guilt, my mom was behind stage and we had this customized Manador outfit, and I still have it to this day, y'all. Maybe I'll post a picture about it. So cute. And I had this Manador outfit, and my mom was like, "Go on stage, Amanda, remember." And I was like maybe 7. And she was like, "You're gonna do the whole with the blanket, and like you're doing the bull, and the bull's coming to you, and I want you walk down the aisle." I was like, "Yes, Totally did not do that because I was so terrified, so shameful to be on that stage. I was like insecure, and so all I did was like walk real fast. I was like, and then I walked off stage. That's exactly what I did, and and I think I ended up getting 2nd or 3rd place. 2nd place in that one. Yes, 2nd place in that one. I ended up going to Vegas and doing the first prize for the first one. So my parents ended up going to Vegas for that. And I got 2nd, and the judge told my mother, they were like, "We wanted your daughter to be number 1. She just didn't smile enough." And I was just like, "Oh, okay, what my mother said was right." But in that moment, I felt shameful because I felt all these eyes on me. And it was in this dark room, and then I hear my dad, "That's my daughter!" And I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is so embarrassing." And so that was, there are different forms of shame. There are different forms of shame and guilt. And I just wanted to talk about that because, I dealt with this on many different bases and throughout my childhood. And I don't necessarily remember them until a moment or an activation comes up and triggers it. And I'm like, "Oh, that did happen. Oh." And like an emotion is associated with it. We have some comments coming in. Shame and guilt are so complex, and the smallest thing can set them off. Absolutely. And here's the thing. Shame and guilt are universal. Everybody has it, whether they admit it or not. And sometimes they can't even speak to it. They just know they feel bad. They know they're not feeling in a good space. Maybe it's sad. They feel sad, but they don't realize that it's coming from guilt or shame. And just like, another thing we talked about, like self-compassion and all these things, guilt and shame has been described as self-conscious emotions, involving reflection on ourselves and who we are. And so shame and guilt can really put a damper on our personality, can really put a damper on our abilities and deter us from following our paths, for following our gifts and trusting ourselves. Shame and guilt can make you doubt your choices. It can make you doubt your abilities because you're shameful because maybe a choice you made in the past came up with a failure or didn't come out the way you expected it. So you feel shame for trying it that way or doing it that way or that choice you made, and you feel guilty that it didn't come out the way you expected it. And therefore, now you don't trust your choices. Now you don't trust yourself. And what I will say with that is understanding that that choice that you made that didn't possibly work out the way you wanted to, there was a lesson there. And if you don't learn from that lesson, if you don't dive into that lesson, you won't be able to make better choices now because you wouldn't have evolved. You wouldn't have learned from it. And so we have another comment here. My guilt is trying to be a student, but feeling guilty takes the time away from my children. I want to be a child psychologist and show my children that you can achieve your goals, but it takes up time. Yes, it can take up time. And I definitely would like to pass this to Nell because I know Nell was a teacher and she worked with kids. And so I know she can have a better grasp on how to distinguish and make space and time for yourself as well as your children, because it can be a lot. It can be a lot to be a mother, a woman, to be independent, but yet be there and open and vulnerable and present and supportive for your children, and yet still be able to be that individual before they came onto this earth. So now I'm going to pass that on to you.
Yes, thank you so much, Nikki, for bringing that up. Oh, you love kids. You also worked with kids. It's Elham or Elham. I'm sorry. I'm like, I don't know how to say it. But yeah, I was a elementary special education teacher. But Nikki, I love you. I grew up with Nikki, and you're a badass. I mean, being a mom and going back to school and studying to be a child psychologist, I think you are showing your children. And I have kind of pseudo stepchildren in a way. They're not technically my stepchildren yet, but it's kind of nice because you're like, oh my God, I remember what it was like to be their age and I want to be the example for them. And so I think you are being the example for them. But also we have that guilt being a woman. Women, we're fucking badass.
Yes.
All this stuff that we do, and also just how society treats you. I hate to generalize. I was just saying this the other day, but I had a client and they were telling me about things that were going on at work and how they've been there longer, they work later hours and they do all these things. And then the man got upgraded, got more pay, and he is also condescending, and everybody thinks he's funny. They think it's funny that he's condescending. And so guess what though? We're still here. Women, we're still here. And we're still pushing. You still got children. We're still going back to school. We're building companies from the ground up. And so despite what society throws at us, so good for you, Nikki, that you're doing that and you're going and you're showing your children that you can do that. And it's hard. I think you have to find a balance. Like I know with myself, and I'm not at all in the same position, but even when the girls are here, we get them a few times a year. I'm like, okay, I got to get up at 4 a.m. and do my stuff from 4 a.m. to 8 a.m. because I really want to be present with them because that's what I needed as a kid. I need my parents to be present. But I think it's a balance. And I think when you do see them and you're talking to them and being like, I love you and I'm doing this work for myself. And because I'm loving myself, I'm loving you even more. And I'm showing you this is something that you can do. I think it's all about communication and sitting down and talking with them as you're learning as a child psychologist, just so they know what's going on, because kids will always take the blame for adult issues. Mm-hmm. Always. I see it all the time. Actually minored in child psychology, and I did it myself, and I've seen it with kids that are around me where they think it's their fault that there's these things happening with their adults that are present. But it's like if somebody was said to me, you know, oh, this isn't your fault, this is what's going on, and they just think that children can't understand, but children are very intelligent. I mean, you don't have to do some type of gruesome details regarding what you're talking about, but you can explain this isn't about you. This is how the world is. And I want you to know that you're special and you're not causing any of this. And you have a space the time to take what you need. And it's all great because you're talking about shame right now and guilt. And there was something else that was said. Shame and guilt are so complex and the smallest things can set them off. Yeah, I just had a breakdown this morning because I was feeling guilty that I feel like I'm trying to accomplish all these things. And I'm just like, here you go again, Janelle. You're sick. You're tired. Get it together. Other people can do this. Shame, 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 shame. And what did that do? That just made me like bottle up and cry and have all this stuff, which is fine. Then you ask yourself the question, what are the reasons that I'm doing this to me? Because I wouldn't talk to somebody else like this.
Mm-hmm.
And then you take those steps back and you say, I'm doing the best I can. I'm doing the work. And like Amanda said, even if I'm not where I want to be and there's something to learn from, I'm just going to learn from it and keep going. How can I do it better? Not you didn't do it right and you didn't do enough.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Mm-hmm.
you're just going to shut yourself down.
Yeah.
So that is what I will say about all of that.
Well, thank you for sharing. Yeah, don't shut down. We're not in the business of shutting down. We're not in the livelihoods of shutting down. I want you to remember how amazing you are, Nikki, Elham. You all are amazing. And whoever's joining, a lot of them I can't see right now, you are all amazing. You don't need anyone to validate your amazingness but you. And I want you to go in that mirror every single day and look at yourself and tell yourself that you are great. You are amazing and that you are still here. Think of all the things you've done, right? There's no reason to feel, we all make choices. We all make mistakes. It happens. We're human. But how do we get better? By learning from those mistakes, not living in the shame or guilt. Yeah. Thank you for that. That's actually a wonderful question. So it came up in many different forms. It was self-inflicted. I was also, because I was bullied somewhat in middle school, freaking hate middle school, but I loved it and I learned from it, right? I was this awkward girl in middle school who was skinny and lengthy, that didn't have the Jordans and the name brand baby fat jeans and all the things. Like my parents did the best they could. And so I was shamed for it because I was Black and I had the curly hair. When I would blow out my hair, it smelled a little burnt because I would go to the hair salon. That's how they did it back in the day, where you come out and your hair smelled burnt, honey. Yeah, baby. That's what I dealt with. Yes, yes, yes. And tried everything, putting all the sheen in it and still smelling a little burnt. But I dealt with that insecurity. And so I would go home. My mom used to tell me, she goes, you would come home and just cry in your room. And my mom would come in and goes, Amanda, you're beautiful. You're amazing. I'm like, you're my mother. You're supposed to tell me those things. Go away. The world should be telling me these things, right? And so the world should be telling me these things. And I would look for it externally. And so I felt very insecure. I didn't feel pretty. I used to think I was absolutely ugly. I hated my voice, which is why it took me so long to really find my voice. Which is why this is part of my mission for you to find your voice, because I don't want you to wait so long to find it. I don't want you to live a life where it takes you over 30 years to find your voice. Absolutely not. And your voice definitely changes throughout your time because obviously we have different experiences and things that we go through. So it came from my middle school days. It came from my family because guess what? You weren't able to feel vulnerable. Like I used to cry in private. You suck it up. Get over it. My dad used to always say, well, get over it. It's life. And yes, I do say that now, but I say with the context of there is work to be done and you will get over it and overcome it. But I have a different context towards it, right? I disassociated the belief that it was put upon me when I was a child, like get over it. It's life. To now like we will get over it and I will overcome it. But I got to do the work. I got to trust in myself. So and then going into industries, again, that weren't necessarily what my parents did. And I felt shameful for that because throughout my life, my parents in different ways and family members have tried different things and they didn't do it and they weren't successful. So I felt shameful for actually trying to do it and actually in a way succeeded. right? Because I succeeded in doing it, I also developed the shame. Because it's like, why me and not them? And so I felt I developed a shame and guilt, like, well, what's the difference between me? And like, yeah, I know the difference. What the difference is that I am choosing to do the opposite. I am choosing to learn from it. And I thank them for their journey and their experience so I can learn from it and do better so that the next generation could also do better than me. That is the whole point, is that we're supposed to do better so the next generation can do better as well. This is not a selfless journey. I know it feels that way, but it's not a selfless journey because everything you go through, there is someone out there who's going through the same thing, if not worse, and they can learn from you. You inspire. There's so many people that I inspire that I didn't even know throughout my journey. I've had people come up to me and go, Amanda, you said that one kind thing to me, and I decided to pursue my dream for being a model, and you did that. I'm like, I did? I was just trying to do my best that I can. Well, I'm glad I did. You're welcome, I guess, right? So when you are doing the work and loving yourself and doing the journey and going through your journey, you spread that to others. It's infectious. It becomes contagious. And so we have some comments. Another comment says, yes, I hated my voice as a child. I would watch home movies and I would say, oh my God, oh my gosh, guys, how are y'all friends with me? Absolutely, man. I hated my voice. And and I don't know where it came from. I don't know, maybe somewhere down the line, someone told me my voice was terrible. Maybe someone around me, because back in the day, I would put my pitch a little bit higher and be so cute and petite because that was a feminine way to be. That was the more appreciated, the more Hollywood. It was like, this is me. I'm sexy. I'm cute. And so I didn't find myself sexy. So what did I do? I raised my voice up to be a little bit sexier and like cute and be accepted. That is denying my truth. That is denying my gifts. I am not like anybody else, and neither are you. And so I want you to, so thank you, Nell, for that question, because that was a really good reason why this topic came up. Yeah, pat yourself in the back. Again, Janelle and I, coaches, we ask the powerful questions, the impactful questions. That's what we do. And so you have to be comfortable with those type of questions, because guess what? You're going to have to dive in deep for them. Dive in deep. Like, where did shame come from? Where did it start? Is it you? Is it really my thought? Or is it someone else's shame put on me? Just like fear and doubt. Right? As a kid, we are sponges. We take on everything in our environment and we believe it's ours. And just like Nell, I study psychology, which is why I love this stuff. I have my degree in forensic psychology. So I study psychology and sociology, anthropology throughout my college years. And I appreciate mankind, humankind, the human beings, womankind, all of that. So I want to, again, thank you all for coming. And I do want to touch base on just a few helpful tips to deal with shame, because that was the whole point of doing this, right? And I want to also appreciate all of you for showing up today, because this little moment of expressing your truth, letting it go, is paving the way and creating space for growth, success, and opportunity to come your way. And I want you to acknowledge that, and don't forget to celebrate yourself. Please do. You are still here. There's so much to do, and you have time. And Nikki, I commend you for wanting to, be a child psychologist and then also having children and trying to balance that. It takes a lot. It's not easy. I'll be honest. It's not easy. Even Janelle and I, even though we don't have kids, we have other things in our lives. Family we take care of, our well-being, jobs, other people's expectations put upon us. We have all the things. It's not just one thing. So we have all these things that we're juggling and trying to balance. It's reality. It's life. But we're only one person. So it really comes down to finding the space and the time to nurture what your true core values are, what your truth is, and your voice. And one of the things that can help you with the shame, and we talked about it briefly, was just separate who you are from what you've done. When you do that, right, you, again, acknowledge the failure, and then you can grow from it, right? You can allow, like actors, you go in the room, just experiment, have fun. Just rearrange your thoughts so that you can see when you go into that audition room or an interview or any room that you go in that, one, you belong. Two, it's an opportunity to have fun, especially as an actor. Don't go in there trying to get the job. Go in there to collaborate, have fun, and work. Because that's going to be received more versus the desperation in the actor. I need the job. Of course, we all need the job. Of course. But if you go back to your root and the why you started this, you will be able to separate the fun and the desperation. You will let go of this. You acknowledge it. And another thing I would say is acknowledge what you're feeling in the moment. I do this quite often, especially when I'm auditioning or even talking even before this. I'm like, oh man, I'm feeling nervous. And my good friend Gibeah Joseph taught me that. He said, in the audition room or during a self-tape, what are you feeling? Oh, I feel a little nervous. I don't know what's going on in my mind. My thoughts are not taking on those words. So say that out loud, because if you don't, it stays here. And you can't quite release it. So say it out loud so it can come out of your body. And I love that. And I use it to this day. Even when I say to myself, like, oh my gosh, I'm feeling really nervous right now. I feel my stomach getting tight. Oh my gosh, my eyes are getting blurry. Whatever it is, I acknowledge it so that I can let it go, because then it becomes a part of my emotions, my craft. You can use it, especially as an artist, and even in the corporate creative world, use it for your craft. It makes you more relatable and more real. Nell, you have something to say?
Wadding away stuff, but I had a lot of thoughts of what you were saying before. And what did Tokyo say? Yes! That's helped me so much. Thank you, Panda, for sharing with me. That's so funny, Tokyo, because remember when we went up and we were in Woodstock with the Airbnb and I got that audition and I was having issues with it and you guys were telling me to deal with that. And I'll tell you, I was like really stuck, and it helped me that we did that because I hadn't had an audition for a long time and I was having an imposter syndrome moment. Speaking of which, to speak to the voice thing, I think, and like you said, it really has to come down to you just always listening to yourself and aligning with yourself and knowing your why to combat shame, and being your own cheerleader. Because even like we have a podcast, Mindset Artistry, where I had to listen to myself, and sometimes I thought, oh, I sound really stupid, or I sound kind of crazy all over the place, but I'm not stupid. And a lot of the way that I speak, I realized came from me protecting other people and from me not wanting to intimidate others, which is why I'm kind of like, la, 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 like you were saying. And so you can't let anybody tell you about yourself. And that's all shame is just like bringing up the fear in you that people are going to take things away from you. An audition, a job, a person, an experience. Because if you're giving that power to other people, that's where shame comes from. Mm-hmm. So don't allow other people to have the power. And it's a process and it takes time. But I think that's like where I'm learning you have to lean more into yourself, spend more time with you. And then there's less shame because you think, well, I don't care about what you think because I know who I am.
Yeah. Beautifully said. When you know who you are, no one can deny it. They can try. They can debate all they want, honey. They can do all the things. But guess what? It's only going to reflect on them. It's not you. A lot of people always put upon they reflect on others what they're feeling internally. Right? So if someone's projecting fear on you, it's because they have their own fear associated with something related to that. Right. And so thank you, thank you, Tokyo, for sharing that, because, in this industry, we all try to uplift each other. And I feel that should be continued, especially as females, as women in this industry, in any industry that's predominantly men, which is most of it. Right. We're always seen as less than. So I want you to stand your ground and solidify yourself. Right. And what I will say, too, is when it comes to shame, and I love that Nell said, definitely go back to your why, revisit your core truth, your core values, understand and grasp your core values, right? Grasp that is find something bigger than you. to be motivated, not just by yourself, but find something bigger and not being self-centered, but finding something that is like, oh, I have a mission to bring a light into the world. I want people to be happier, because then it takes it off you, and you know that you are of service in a way, right? You are sharing your story. I said it before, is that your story is meant to be shared. Now, of course, be careful who you share your story with, because there will be judgmental people, but know your strength and your truth, and it will never matter, right? It will never matter. So have that motivation that's bigger than you, that bigger picture, because then also you realize how small of a fucking speck we are in this big ass universe that we can't even explain. I grew up Catholic. I know that there's a higher being, and I don't study, but I'm very spiritual. And so I know that there's a higher thing, a higher being at work, or whatever the heck it is. I can't quite say what it is, but I know that there's energy out there. I mean, there's the God particle. Come on, honey. Anyway, let me not get into it now. Let me not get into it, getting stalked by the government or something. I'm just kidding. No, but really, you have to find something bigger than you, because it's going to motivate you, and you're also going to open yourself up to the broad spectrum of others. You understand that they're going through that journey just like you are. And in that, you'll be able to share your shame. Do not feel shameful or guilty for sharing your shame. And I know that sounds redundant. I'm like, what the heck does that mean? Because when you share your shame, it also lessens the importance of it. It lessens the importance of that shame, because you realize it's not as hard or simple, or difficult as it seems. It's also not a lonely road. It's not a lonely journey. There are a lot of people who may have smiles on their faces, but they have that shame, guilt, or fear, or doubt, or pain and suffering that they're dealing with. You just know how to hide it better. And I was one of those people that would smile all the time, but feel pain inside. And so, again, shame and guilt is universal, but it doesn't have to control you. It doesn't have to define you. Think of shame. Yes, shame. I don't want you to make shame an adjective. It is a noun, honey. It is a noun. Do not let that describe your attributes. I am a shameful person, or I am guiltful, or guilty. These are not your adjectives, honey. You are abundant, happy, joyous, vivacious. Those are your adjectives, not shame. Those are nouns that describe or identify a feeling in the moment, honey. A moment. And this moment will pass. It may not seem like it, honey, because I know I have many, many moments. Or whatever those moments are, I'm like, I don't understand why I'm feeling this. If I don't acknowledge it and I don't trust that it will pass, it never will. It'll just build, and then it'll start attracting like a magnet all the other negative emotions. All the other negative things: shame, doubt, fear, resentment, not taking responsibility for our choices, all the things, not feeling love, hate towards ourselves. It will attract like a magnet, because misery loves company. So, it's like a conference room, and it's like all think of all the people there. It's like, oh, shame. Shame is going to invite pain. Pain is going to invite fear. They're going to invite into a whole conference and talk about it and be there talking to each other consistently. No. You're not in that room. Close that door and go into the room of joy and abundance. But acknowledge that they are there. Be grateful that they are there, because they're showing you something that needs to be addressed. But choose differently. Tabitha Brown always said, and that she was in an interview recently, and they asked her, how is she so joyful? And she said, I choose it. It is a choice, because she went through a dark, dark journey in her life. And she knew she never wanted to go back to that. So she actively chooses joy. It is a choice. Choose differently.
What are your thoughts about this episode?
Drop it in the comments and let us know what you want to dive into next.
Subscribe, like, share, and click the link below to book a free consultation. And
we'll see you next time.